Admiral Krelvex of the Vrelkoth Empire watched the human planet grow larger on his display screen. He had commanded fleets for 60 years and conquered 12 species during his career. This would be his easiest victory yet. The humans had refused to evacuate, which was foolish but not unexpected. Primitive species often failed to understand their place in the galaxy. His fleet of 300 warships moved into attack formation. They would disable the human defense stations first, then systematically destroy any ships that resisted. If the humans continued to refuse, orbital bombardment would follow. Krelvex had done this many times before. It was routine. "Sir, the human ships are moving," his tactical officer reported. "They're not retreating. They're advancing." Krelvex clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Let them come. Perhaps they need a demonstration of our power." What happened next would change everything. The Council thought they knew about warfare. Commander Ben Harris watched from Luna Station as his small fleet moved toward the massive Council armada. He knew the numbers. He knew the odds. Every person under his command knew this was likely a one-way trip. But they also knew that humanity's survival depended on making the Council think twice about easy victories. "All ships, this is Commander Harris. Remember your training. We're not trying to win this battle. We're trying to survive long enough to hurt them. Make them remember us. Make them respect us. And if you're going down, take as many of them with you as possible." The first missiles launched from both sides. Council ships had powerful shields that could absorb tremendous damage. Human missiles were less advanced, but there were a lot of them. Hundreds of warheads streaked across the void, many exploding harmlessly against enemy shields. But a few got through. Admiral Krelvex was surprised when one of his frigates exploded. Then another. The human weapons were crude, but they were using them in unexpected ways. Missiles that looked like they were missing would suddenly change course. Torpedoes that seemed to be decoys were actually full warheads. This was not how civilized species fought. "Focus fire on their command ships," Krelvex ordered. "End this quickly." But Commander Ben Harris had no command ship sitting safely in the rear. He was on the destroyer Valiant, right in the middle of the fighting. When a Council dreadnought locked weapons on his ship, Ben didn't try to run. He turned straight toward it, full power to engines. "Ram them." The bridge crew didn't hesitate. The Valiant accelerated, taking hit after hit. Hull breaches opened across the ship. Half the crew died in seconds, but the destroyer kept coming. At the last moment, Ben gave one final order: detonate the reactor now. The explosion was massive. The Valiant died, but it took the Council dreadnought with it, along with 2 nearby cruisers. Across the battle, other human captains saw what Ben had done. They began doing the same thing. Ships too damaged to fight would ram enemy vessels. Pilots whose fighters were hit would crash into Council ships instead of ejecting. Admiral Krelvex watched in growing horror as his fleet began taking losses they shouldn't be taking. The humans were fighting like cornered animals, using suicide tactics that no civilized species would consider. When a human destroyer rammed his flagship, killing his second-in-command and 300 crew members, Krelvex made a decision. "All ships, pull back. We need to regroup and develop new tactics." The Battle of Mars Orbit ended with a Council victory. The human defense fleet was destroyed, but the Council had lost 70 ships and over 30,000 personnel. Admiral Krelvex sent his report back to Zentara Prime, and for the first time in his career his hands were shaking as he wrote it. On Earth, President Amy Holland addressed the survivors. Millions had watched the battle through long-range cameras. They had seen their defenders die, but they had also seen the Council fleet retreat. "They beat us today," Amy said. Her voice carried across every remaining communication network, but they paid a price they weren't expecting. "They thought we would surrender when we saw their power. Instead, we showed them our power. Not the power of advanced weapons or mighty ships, but the power of humans who refused to give up. Commander Ben Harris and 15,000 others gave their lives today. They bought us time. Let's not waste it." In underground facilities across Earth, scientists and engineers worked frantically. Dr. Helen Pierce led a team studying captured Council technology from a damaged frigate that had crashed in the Pacific Ocean. She was a brilliant computer scientist who had once hacked into the Pentagon just to prove she could. Now she was trying to hack into alien computer systems. "Their security is actually not that good," Helen told General Chris Bennett, who was coordinating Earth's defense. "They've been so dominant for so long that they've gotten lazy. I think I can create a virus that will infect their network. How long? Chris asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. But I'll need a way to deliver it to their central communication hub. We'll figure that out. Keep working. Meanwhile, Colonel Ryan Foster was training special operations teams for missions behind enemy lines. Ryan had spent 15 years in special forces, operating in the worst places on Earth. Now he was planning operations against an alien empire. We can't match their technology, Ryan told his teams. So we use what we're good at. Stealth, speed, surprise, we hit them where they don't expect it. Supply depots. Command centers. We make them afraid to sleep at night. Captain Greg Murphy volunteered for the most dangerous mission. He would pilot a stealth ship through Council-controlled space to their communication hub. It was a suicide mission, but Greg didn't hesitate. He was a quiet man who had joined the Space Force to see the stars. Now he would save humanity by flying into the heart of enemy territory. Lieutenant Daniel Price gathered his fellow pilots for a briefing. Daniel was only 24 years old, but he had proven himself in the battle at Mars. He and 49 other pilots were being given modified fighters loaded with nuclear warheads. We're going after their supply convoy, Daniel explained, showing a holographic map. It's protected by 50 warships. We probably won't come back, but if we take out their supplies, the main fleet will have to retreat for resupply. That gives Earth more time. Every pilot volunteered. Some were young like Daniel. Others were veterans who had flown for decades. All of them understood the mission. All of them were ready to die. Admiral Kate Sullivan took command of what remained of Earth's space forces. Kate was a career military officer who had spent 30 years preparing for threats that everyone said would never come. Now those threats were here and she was ready. The Council thinks they know how we'll fight, Kate told her officers. They've studied our history. They've read our military doctrine. They think they understand us. That's their weakness. We're going to show them tactics they've never seen. We're going to fight in ways that would horrify civilized species, because right now survival is all that matters. On Zentara Prime, the Council members debated humanity's resistance. Some species called for negotiation. The humans had proven tougher than expected. Perhaps a compromise could be reached, but High Chancellor Vrelkoth was furious. A compromise? We are the Galactic Council. We have ruled for 12,000 years. No primitive species defies us and survives. Send 800 ships. Destroy their military completely. Show the galaxy what happens to those who resist. The vote was close, but the Council agreed. A massive fleet began gathering, the largest armada assembled in over 1,000 years. They would crush humanity once and for all, but humanity was preparing too. In shipyards, factories, and laboratories across Earth and her colonies, people worked without rest. New weapons were designed. Old tactics were reimagined, and deep in a secret facility, Dr. Helen Pierce smiled as her virus successfully infected a test system. We're ready, she said. The real war was about to begin. Captain Greg Murphy had been flying for 6 weeks through Council territory, his stealth ship barely larger than a fighter. Every day brought new dangers. Council patrols passed within kilometers of his position. Automated defense stations scanned the area where he hid. But Greg was patient and skilled, and his ship was coated with technology that made it nearly invisible. Now he floated in orbit around the Council's central communication hub, a massive station that coordinated fleet movements across 1,000 star systems. Dr. Helen Pierce's virus was loaded and ready. All Greg had to do was get close enough to inject it into their network. This is Murphy to Earth, he whispered into his comm system, knowing the message would take days to arrive. I'm in position. Beginning the upload now. If this works, their fleet coordination is going to fall apart. If you're watching this recording, it means I didn't make it back. Tell my sister I love her. Murphy out. Greg activated the virus upload and watched as data flowed from his ship to the station. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Alarms suddenly blared across the station. They had detected him. Energy beams lanced through space. Greg's ship took hit after hit. His shields failed. Hull breaches opened. But the upload was at 90%, 95%, then complete. Got you, Greg said with a smile, even as his ship began to break apart. Back on Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan was preparing for the largest battle in human history. The Council fleet of 800 ships was approaching the solar system. Her forces numbered only 90 ships, most hastily built in the months since the war began. On paper it was hopeless, but Kate wasn't planning a conventional battle. All ships scatter formation, she ordered. Hide in the asteroid belt behind Jupiter's moons, anywhere with cover. When they come looking for us, we ambush them one group at a time. Admiral Krelvex arrived with his massive fleet, confident that this time there would be no mistakes. The humans would be crushed quickly and efficiently. His ships moved into Earth's solar system in perfect formation, their coordination managed by the central hub that connected all Council military operations. Then everything went wrong. Ships began receiving conflicting orders. Navigation systems showed different coordinates to different vessels. Communication channels were flooded with garbage data. Dr. Helen Pierce's virus had worked perfectly, spreading through the Council's network like wildfire. Within minutes, the carefully coordinated fleet was in chaos. Now, Kate ordered. Human ships emerged from hiding like sharks smelling blood. They targeted confused Council vessels, hitting them with everything they had. Lieutenant Daniel Price led his squadron of nuclear-armed fighters straight into the heart of the enemy formation. His warhead detonated between 3 Council cruisers, destroying all of them in a blinding flash. Daniel's last thought was of his parents, watching from Earth. He hoped they were proud. On the surface of Mars, Colonel Ryan Foster and his Special Operations team watched as a Council supply convoy landed. The aliens thought Mars was secure, far from Earth's defenses. They were wrong. Wait for it, Ryan whispered to his team. Wait until they start unloading. When the cargo ships opened their bays, Ryan gave the signal. Hidden explosives detonated simultaneously, destroying the entire convoy and the supply depot it had been servicing. Ryan's team disappeared into the Martian canyons before the Council guards even understood what had happened. Similar attacks were happening across the solar system. Major Kyle Henderson led resistance fighters who sabotaged Council equipment on occupied stations. Engineer Samantha Wells designed clever traps that turned Council technology against itself. Everywhere the Council looked, humans were hitting them where they weren't defended. But the Council was learning. They began spreading out, refusing to cluster their ships. They stopped using the compromised communication network and relied on direct ship-to-ship signals. They adapted their tactics to account for human unpredictability. The fighting became brutal. Earth's cities were bombed from orbit. New York was reduced to rubble. Tokyo burned. Sydney disappeared beneath a cloud of radioactive ash. Millions of people died, and millions more fled to underground shelters. President Amy Holland stood in a bunker deep beneath the Rockies, watching the destruction on her screens. Advisors urged her to surrender, to save what remained of humanity. But Amy remembered her promise. Authorize Protocol Hellfire, she said quietly. General Chris Bennett looked shocked. Madam President, those weapons are banned under every treaty Earth has ever signed. They're considered crimes against sentient life. The Council wants to take our world, Amy said coldly. They're willing to kill billions of us to get it. So we use every weapon we have, every single one. No restrictions, no mercy. If we're going to lose, we're taking them down with us. Dr. Helen Pierce had been working on more than just computer viruses. She had been developing biological weapons specifically designed to target Council species. They were horrifying creations that attacked alien biology in ways that caused tremendous suffering. Helen had nightmares about what she was creating. But she kept working. These will work on the Vrelkoth and about a dozen other Council species, she told Chris. But we have to deliver them to their homeworlds. That means getting past their defenses. Leave that to me, said Commander Nicole Brady, who had taken over after Ben Harris's death. Nicole was a tough woman who had clawed her way up from enlisted ranks to command. I've got a plan. Nicole's plan was insane. She would lead a team of Marines to board and capture a Council dreadnought, the Pride of Zentara. Then they would fly it straight to Council worlds and deploy the biological weapons before anyone realized the ship had been captured. The boarding action was vicious. Marines in powered armor fought alien warriors in narrow corridors. Nicole herself killed 6 Vrelkoth soldiers with nothing but a combat knife when her rifle ran out of ammunition. Half her team died, but they took the ship. When the Pride of Zentara jumped into orbit around the Vrelkoth homeworld, traffic control welcomed it home. By the time they realized something was wrong, Nicole had already deployed the biological weapon. Within days, millions of Vrelkoth would be dead. Nicole didn't feel good about it. She felt sick. But she had her orders. The Council was horrified. Humanity was breaking every rule of warfare. They were using forbidden weapons, targeting civilians, employing tactics that civilized species had abandoned thousands of years ago. This wasn't war as the Council understood it. This was total war, the kind where nothing was off limits and survival was the only goal. Some Council species began calling for peace. The economic cost of the war was enormous. The psychological cost was worse. Council soldiers were afraid to engage human forces because humans never retreated, never surrendered, and often took their enemies down with them when they died. The telepathic Silmari species sent diplomats to probe captured human soldiers' minds, trying to understand what drove them. What they found terrified them more than any weapon. Every human they examined would rather die than submit. Every single one. This wasn't just military bravado or propaganda. It was a fundamental part of human nature. They're individually weak, the Silmari ambassador reported to the Council. Their ships are inferior. Their technology is primitive. But their minds are fortresses. They have accepted death as preferable to defeat. How do you fight an enemy that truly fears nothing? Admiral Krelvex had no answer. He sat in his command chair staring at casualty reports. His fleet had been reduced by half. The Vrelkoth homeworld was in chaos from the biological attack. Supply lines were constantly raided. Every day brought new losses, new disasters. For the first time in his long career, Krelvex considered the possibility of defeat. Not because the humans were stronger, but because they were willing to pay any price for victory. The Council species had become soft after millennia of peace. They valued their lives, their comfort, their civilization. Humans seemed to value only one thing: refusing to surrender. On Earth, engineer Samantha Wells was putting the finishing touches on humanity's ultimate weapon. She called it the Prometheus device. It was designed to destabilize stars, turning them into supernovas that would destroy entire solar systems. If we use this, billions will die, Samantha told President Amy Holland. Not just military targets. Everyone in those systems. Their planets, their colonies, everything. Amy's face was lined with exhaustion and grief. She had aged 10 years in the 2 years since the war began. Will it end the war? Yes. If we demonstrate it once, they'll surrender rather than risk losing their homeworlds. Then we build it. And we pray we never have to use it. But if we do, we won't hesitate. The war had changed everyone. The bright optimism of first contact was gone. In its place was cold determination. Humanity would survive no matter the cost. The Council was learning this lesson slowly, painfully, one battle at a time. The stars themselves seemed to tremble as two civilizations locked in a death struggle. But the tide was beginning to turn, and not in the direction the Council had expected. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at the strange ships that had just appeared on his screens. They were unlike anything humanity had ever built. Smooth, flowing shapes that seemed to glow with inner light. After 3 weeks of exploring the Kepler system, his crew had finally found what they were looking for. They were not alone in the universe. The communications officer, a young woman named Claire Hopkins, turned to Jake with wide eyes. "Captain, they're hailing us. The computer is translating their language somehow." Jake took a deep breath and nodded. "Put them through." The face that appeared on the screen was not human. It had large, multifaceted eyes and mandibles that clicked when it spoke, but the voice that came through the speakers was calm and welcoming. "Greetings, travelers from Earth. We are the Vrelkoth, representatives of the Galactic Council. We have been watching your species with great interest." Within days, Earth was buzzing with excitement. Humanity had made first contact with an advanced alien civilization. Not just one species, but 47 different races that had formed a government spanning thousands of star systems. The news spread across every network, every social media platform, every conversation. People danced in the streets. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. Ambassador Lisa Carter was chosen to represent Earth at the Council's capital world. She was a skilled diplomat who had resolved conflicts between nations for 20 years. If anyone could navigate the complex politics of an alien government, it was Lisa. She boarded a Council transport ship along with a team of scientists, linguists, and military advisors. The journey to Zentara Prime took 3 weeks, even with their faster-than-light technology. When Lisa first saw the Council chambers, she felt overwhelmed. The room was massive, with seats arranged in a circle rising up like an ancient amphitheater. Each section held representatives from different species. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien that Lisa struggled to understand how they even perceived the world. There were beings made of crystalline structures, creatures that floated in tanks of liquid, and entities that existed partially in multiple dimensions. The leader of the council, a tall insectoid named High Chancellor Vrelkoth, welcomed Lisa with what seemed like genuine warmth. Ambassador Carter, we are pleased to welcome humanity to the galactic community. Your species shows great promise. But as the weeks turned into months, Lisa began to notice something troubling. The council's welcome was not quite as warm as it first appeared. In meetings, human suggestions were politely ignored. When Lisa asked about technology sharing, she was told that Earth was classified as a Class 3 civilization, too primitive to handle advanced knowledge. Human ships were restricted to certain areas of space. Human trade was limited to basic goods. Lisa reported her concerns to President Amy Holland back on Earth. They're treating us like children, she said during a secure video call. We're not partners. We're barely tolerated guests, Amy frowned. She was a tough leader who had risen from poverty to become the first woman president of the United Earth government. Keep trying, Lisa. We need allies out here. We're too vulnerable on our own. Back on Earth, things were changing rapidly. Commander Ben Harris oversaw the expansion of humanity's space fleet from Luna Station, a massive military base on the moon. Engineers worked day and night to improve human ships, trying to close the technological gap with the Council. Scientists studied every scrap of information they could gather about alien technology. Humanity knew they were behind and they were desperate to catch up. Then everything changed. 6 months after first contact, a fleet of Council ships arrived in Earth's solar system without warning. They were not the friendly exploration vessels that had first greeted the horizon's edge. These were warships, bristling with weapons that made Earth's most advanced cruisers look like toys. High Chancellor Vrelkoth appeared on every screen across Earth. His voice was no longer warm. People of Earth, the Council has made an important discovery. Your solar system sits atop one of the largest deposits of chronite in the known galaxy. This mineral is essential for faster-than-light travel. The Council has voted, and we have decided that this resource is too valuable to leave in the hands of a primitive species. You have 72 hours to begin evacuating your homeworld. You will be relocated to suitable colony worlds where you can continue to develop as a species. The announcement sent shockwaves across Earth. Evacuate. Leave their home, the planet where humanity had evolved, where every person's ancestors had lived and died for hundreds of thousands of years. It was unthinkable. President Amy Holland called an emergency meeting of Earth's government. Ambassador Lisa Carter joined via video link from Zentara Prime, where she was being held under what the Council called protective custody. Commander Ben Harris stood at attention, his jaw clenched in anger. Can we fight them? Amy asked Ben directly. Ben pulled up a holographic display showing the Council fleet. They have 300 warships in our system right now, and that's just the first wave. Our entire fleet has 68 ships, and our weapons are decades behind theirs. In a straight fight, we'd lose in less than an hour. Then we don't fight straight, Amy said quietly. She looked at each person in the room. Our ancestors faced impossible odds before. They survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. We're still here because humans don't give up. We don't surrender. We adapt, we fight, and we survive. Ben nodded slowly. There's a contingency plan. We call it Protocol Ragnarok. If we can't win conventionally, we make them bleed for every inch. We make the cost so high that they'll wish they'd never heard of Earth. Amy stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the blue planet below. Send a message to the Council. Tell them that humanity appreciates their offer, but we must respectfully decline. Earth is our home and we will not leave. If they want it, they'll have to take it from us. The room was silent for a moment. Everyone knew what this meant. War. Against an enemy with superior technology, superior numbers, and thousands of years of experience conquering other worlds. Lisa's voice came through the speaker, shaky but determined. Madam President, the Council won't back down. They've never been defied before. They'll see this as an insult that must be punished. Amy turned back to face the screen. Then let them come. The Council is about to learn something important about humans. We're at our most dangerous when we have nothing left to lose. 72 hours later, humanity's answer was clear. Not a single person boarded the Council's evacuation ships. Instead, Commander Ben Harris positioned Earth's defense fleet in orbit, ready to fight. On the ground, people retreated to underground shelters prepared for bombardment. President Amy Holland broadcast one final message to both Earth and the Council. To the Galactic Council, we say this: humanity will not abandon our home. We will not bow to threats. We will not surrender. If you want Earth, come and take it. But know that every inch of ground, every orbital station, every human ship will be paid for in blood. You may destroy us, but we will make you remember us forever. The stars are about to witness what happens when you push humanity too far. The Council fleet began moving toward Earth. The war had begun. The Council chambers on Zentara Prime were in chaos. Representatives from 47 species shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the angry voices filling the massive room. We have lost more ships in 2 years fighting humans than in the last 1,000 years of peace, shouted the representative from the Talax species, a floating being that communicated through color changes. Our economy is collapsing. Our people are demanding answers. High Chancellor Vrelkoth tried to restore order, but even his authority was being questioned. 23 Council species had already threatened to withdraw from the war. Some had even sent secret peace offers to Earth asking for separate treaties. The unthinkable was happening. The mighty Galactic Council was fracturing, all because of one primitive species that refused to know its place. Admiral Kate Sullivan saw the intelligence reports and knew the time was right. The Council was weakening, but humanity needed to push harder. She had been planning Operation Judgment for months, waiting for the perfect moment. Now that moment had come. We're taking the war to their worlds, Kate announced at a meeting of Earth's military leadership. Not just their military targets. Their governments, their infrastructure, their sense of security. They need to understand that if Earth burns, so does the rest of the galaxy. Commander Eric Stone would lead the strike teams. Eric was a veteran who had fought in the first battles at Mars. He had watched friends die, seen Earth's cities destroyed, and lost his entire family when Council ships bombed Denver. Now he had a chance for payback. 12 human stealth ships slipped through Council space, each carrying a team of Special Forces soldiers. Their targets were carefully chosen. Not civilians, but the centers of Council power, military headquarters, government buildings, communication hubs. On the Talax homeworld, Eric's team infiltrated the planetary defense network and shut it down for 3 hours. No shots were fired, no one died, but the message was clear. Earth could reach any world anytime. No one was safe. On other Council worlds, human teams destroyed military factories, sabotaged fusion reactors, and disrupted supply chains. The attacks were coordinated across dozens of systems simultaneously. The Council suddenly realized that while they had been focused on conquering Earth, humanity had been spreading across their territory like a cancer. The psychological impact was devastating. Council species had felt secure for millennia. Their worlds were far from the front lines, protected by mighty fleets and advanced defenses. Now humans were showing them that distance and defenses meant nothing. If humans could strike the Talax homeworld, they could strike anywhere. Captain Laura Bennett had volunteered for the most dangerous mission. She would pilot a small ship loaded with the Prometheus device into the heart of the Vrelkoth home system. Her orders were to force a surrender, using the threat of the weapon if possible. But if they called her bluff, she was authorized to use it. Laura had been a pilot for 15 years. She had a husband and 2 children waiting for her on Mars Colony. She knew this might be a one-way mission, but someone had to do it. Someone had to make the Council understand that humanity's threats were not empty words. Her ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vrelkoth system. Alarms immediately began blaring across every Council station and ship. Laura broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Laura Bennett of the Terran Federation. I am carrying a Prometheus device capable of destroying your sun and every planet in this system. You have 1 hour to begin withdrawal of all Council forces from Earth's solar system. If you refuse, I will activate the device. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." High Chancellor Vrelkoth, who happened to be visiting his homeworld, was awakened by frantic aides. He rushed to the command center and saw the small human ship on the displays. "She's bluffing," he said confidently. "Even humans wouldn't destroy an entire star system. The death toll would be in the billions." His military advisor, a younger Vrelkoth named Texel, wasn't so sure. "Sir, they've already deployed biological weapons against our colonies. They've shown no regard for rules of warfare. What if she's not bluffing? If we surrender to threats, we show weakness to every species in the galaxy. Order our ships to destroy her vessel. 50 warships converged on Laura's position. She watched them come, her hand hovering over the activation switch. She thought about her children, about Earth, about all the humans who had already died in this war. Then she thought about the billions of Relkoth civilians on the planets below, people who had nothing to do with the war. But her orders were clear. The Council had to understand that humanity would do anything, sacrifice anything, to survive. Laura activated the device. The Prometheus device began its work, sending cascading waves of exotic particles into the sun. The effect wouldn't be immediate, but it was irreversible. In approximately 6 hours, the star would go supernova. Everything in the system would be destroyed. Laura didn't try to escape. She closed her eyes and waited as the Council ships opened fire. Her ship exploded in seconds. But her message had been delivered. Across the Vrelkoth system, evacuation alarms began wailing. Billions of people scrambled for ships trying to escape. But there weren't enough ships. There wasn't enough time. Panic spread like wildfire. High Chancellor Vrelkoth stared at the data in horror. His scientists confirmed it. The sun was becoming unstable. Nothing could stop it now. 3 planets would be destroyed. Including his homeworld. He had been wrong. The humans weren't bluffing. They really would sacrifice everything, do anything to win. Contact Earth, he said quietly. Tell them we want to negotiate. But Laura's sacrifice wasn't the only blow the Council suffered that day. Engineer Samantha Wells had distributed plans for the Prometheus device to human forces across the galaxy. Now 20 more human ships appeared at various Council systems, each carrying the same weapon, each broadcasting the same message. The Council's unity shattered completely. 16 species immediately voted to withdraw from the war. They wanted no part of a conflict where entire star systems could be destroyed. Others demanded the Vrelkoth be held responsible for starting the war. A few even began secret negotiations to join humanity against the Council. Admiral Kate Sullivan watched the reports coming in and allowed herself a small smile. Operation Judgment had worked better than she dared hope. The Council was breaking apart, but the cost had been terrible. Laura Bennett was dead, along with thousands of other brave men and women, and 3 Vrelkoth planets would soon be ash. Was it worth it? Asked General Chris Bennett, Kate's second-in-command. Kate was silent for a long moment. Ask me when the war is over. Right now, we still have work to do. On Earth, President Amy Holland addressed the planet. The war had been brutal. Billions were dead on both sides. Earth's cities were ruins. But humanity had survived, and now victory was within reach. The Council came to our world with threats and ultimatums, Amy said. They thought we would surrender because we were weaker. They were wrong. We taught them that strength isn't measured in ships or weapons. It's measured in will. And humanity's will is unbreakable. The end is near. Hold on just a little longer. In the Council chambers, a vote was called. Should they continue the war or seek peace? For the first time in 12,000 years, the Council couldn't reach a decision. The government that had ruled the galaxy was paralyzed by fear and disagreement. The Silmari ambassador stood before the assembly, her telepathic voice filling everyone's mind. I have examined human minds. I have felt their thoughts. And I tell you all now, we cannot win this war, not because they are stronger, but because they will never stop. They will burn the entire galaxy before they surrender. We must make peace while we still can. The vote was close, but peace won. Barely. High Chancellor Vrelkoth was removed from power, blamed for the disaster. In his place, a coalition of species more interested in survival than pride took control. They sent a message to Earth, asking for a meeting to discuss terms of surrender, not a peace treaty. Surrender. The mighty Galactic Council was surrendering to humanity. Admiral Kate Sullivan read the message 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. Then she sent a simple response: we accept. Send your representatives to the human battleship Defiance. Come alone and unarmed. We will discuss terms. The war wasn't over yet. But for the first time in 2 years, Kate allowed herself to hope that humanity might actually survive this. The stars had witnessed something unprecedented. A species that had been dismissed as primitive had brought the most powerful government in the galaxy to its knees. And the galaxy would never be the same. The Council delegation arrived at the human battleship Defiance 3 weeks after their surrender message. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the docking bay, watching as the alien representatives stepped off their shuttle. They looked nervous, uncertain. Good. They should be. The Silmari ambassador led the group. Behind her came representatives from a dozen major council species, including the Vrelkoth, but not High Chancellor Vrelkoth. He had been removed from power and was awaiting trial on his homeworld for crimes against his own people. Kate didn't salute. She didn't welcome them with friendly words. She simply turned and walked toward the conference room. "Follow me." The room was deliberately plain. No decorations, no comfortable furniture, just a long metal table and basic chairs. Kate wanted them to understand this was not a meeting between equals. This was a victor dictating terms to the defeated. President Amy Holland appeared on a large screen at the end of the room. She looked older than when the war began, her hair now completely gray. But her eyes were as hard as steel. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," Amy began without preamble. "You came to our world 2 years ago and demanded we abandon our home. You threatened us with annihilation if we refused. We refused, and now you're here to surrender. I want to make sure you understand the situation clearly before we discuss terms." The Silmari ambassador bowed her head. "We understand, President Holland. The Council has been humbled by this conflict. We seek to end hostilities and establish peaceful relations." "Peaceful relations?" Amy's voice was cold. "You killed billions of my people. You destroyed our cities. You tried to exterminate us. And now you want peace because you're losing. That's not how this works." Kate pulled up a holographic display showing Council territories. "These are the terms. First, Earth and all human colonies are recognized as completely sovereign. No Council authority over our worlds, our ships, or our people. Second, humanity receives full membership in the Council with veto power over all major decisions. Third, the Vrelkoth Empire will pay reparations to Earth for the next 100 years. Fourth, all Council military forces withdraw from human space immediately. Fifth, any Council species that wants to establish relations with humanity does so on our terms, not yours." The representatives looked at each other. These weren't peace terms. This was total surrender. But they had no choice. The alternative was continued war, and the Council couldn't survive that. "We accept," the Silmari ambassador said quietly. "Good," Amy said from the screen. "Because if you don't, we have 40 more ships equipped with Prometheus devices. We will start destroying Council homeworlds one by one until you do accept. We learned during this war that sometimes the only way to achieve peace is to be willing to wage total war. You taught us that lesson." The treaty was signed that day aboard the Defiance. The Galactic Council, which had ruled for 12,000 years, formally surrendered to humanity. News of the treaty spread across the galaxy within hours. Some species celebrated, tired of the war's cost. Others were shocked that the mighty Council had fallen so far. But everyone understood that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. On Earth, celebrations erupted in the ruins of cities and in underground shelters. People cried, hugged strangers, and mourned those who hadn't lived to see this day. President Amy Holland broadcast one final wartime message. "We won," she said simply. "Not because we were stronger or smarter or better equipped. We won because we refused to lose. Every person who died in this war gave their life for a simple principle. That humanity bows to no one. That Earth is our home and we will never abandon it. Today, the galaxy knows what we have always known. That human beings will endure any hardship, face any enemy, and pay any price to remain free. The war is over. Now we rebuild. The rebuilding took years. Cities rose from the ashes. New ships were built in orbital shipyards. Engineers worked alongside former Council scientists, combining human innovation with alien technology. Within 5 years, human ships were among the most advanced in the galaxy. Commander Eric Stone, who had led the strike teams during Operation Judgment, was promoted to general and tasked with training the next generation of human soldiers. He made sure they learned not just how to fight, but why humanity had fought. The lessons of the war would never be forgotten. Dr. Helen Pierce, who had created both the computer virus and the biological weapons, struggled with guilt over what she had done. Millions had died because of her creations, but she channeled that guilt into positive work, leading research projects that combined human and Council medical knowledge. Her work would eventually save more lives than her weapons had taken. Engineer Samantha Wells became famous across the galaxy. The woman who had created the weapon that ended the war was offered positions at universities on a dozen worlds. She turned them all down and stayed on Earth teaching young engineers. When asked why, she said simply, "I need to make sure the next generation understands that just because we can build something doesn't mean we should." Admiral Kate Sullivan retired from active duty after 5 years of peacetime service. She had earned more medals and honors than any officer in human history, but she only kept one item on display in her home: a photograph of Commander Ben Harris and the crew of the Valiant, the ship that had rammed a Council dreadnought in the first battle at Mars. "They started it," Kate would tell visitors who asked about the photo. "They showed us what we needed to do to win. We just followed their example." Lieutenant Daniel Price, who everyone thought had died in the nuclear strike, had actually survived. His fighter had been disabled but not destroyed. He had drifted in space for 3 days before being rescued by a human patrol. After the war, Daniel became an ambassador, working to build bridges between humanity and former Council species. "The war is over," Daniel would say in his speeches. "But the work of peace is harder than the work of war. We proved we could fight. Now we have to prove we can forgive." Not everyone wanted forgiveness. Many humans harbored deep hatred for the Council species, but President Amy Holland, serving her 3rd term, pushed for reconciliation. She established the Galactic Peace Initiative, offering humanitarian aid to war-torn Council worlds. It was controversial, but Amy believed it was necessary. "If we let hatred define us, then the Council wins after all," she told critics. "They tried to destroy humanity. We proved they couldn't. But if we become monsters ourselves, then we've destroyed ourselves anyway. We're better than that." The Terran Federation expanded rapidly. Human colonies spread across hundreds of systems. Former Council species, seeing humanity's strength and vitality, sought alliances and trade agreements. Some even asked to join the Federation. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted completely. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was forever changed. Humanity sat at the head of the table now, not as conquerors, but as the species that had reminded everyone what strength really meant. Other young species looked to humanity as an example. If humans could stand up to the Council and win, maybe they could too. 50 years after the war ended, an elderly Admiral Kate Sullivan stood before a memorial on Earth. It was a simple black wall with millions of names carved into it. Every person who had died in the war was remembered here. Kate came every year on the anniversary of the first battle at Mars. A young reporter approached her, asking for an interview. The reporter was barely 20 years old, born after the war ended. To her, the conflict was just history. But to Kate, it was yesterday. "Admiral Sullivan, what does humanity's victory mean for the future?" the reporter asked. Kate was silent for a long moment, looking at the names on the wall. Commander Ben Harris, Lieutenant Daniel Price's wingman, Captain Laura Bennett, Captain Greg Murphy, so many others. Friends, colleagues, heroes. The Council learned too late that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our ships or our bombs or our tactics, Kate finally said. It's our refusal to ever kneel. They had better technology. They had more ships. They had thousands of years of experience. But they didn't have what we had. They didn't have the absolute certainty that we would rather die than surrender. That's what saved us. That's what the galaxy now understands about humanity. The reporter pressed for more. But wasn't it just luck? If a few things had gone differently, we could have lost. Kate shook her head. No, we couldn't have lost. Because losing meant extinction, and humans don't accept extinction. We adapt, we innovate. We find a way. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. The Council forgot that every species they had conquered accepted defeat eventually. They couldn't imagine a species that simply wouldn't accept it under any circumstances. She turned back to the memorial. These people died so that humanity could be free.
They gave everything.
And because of them, our children will grow up in a galaxy where Earth is respected, where humans are feared and admired, where no one will ever again think they can push us around. That's what their sacrifice bought. That's what we must never forget. The reporter thanked her and left. Kate stood alone before the wall of names, an old woman remembering young warriors. The war had taken so much from humanity, but it had also given something back. Pride. Unity. The knowledge that when pushed to the edge, humans would do whatever it took to survive. The stars that had witnessed Earth,